course. Have they finished eating?
Always ready. Yeah.
Finish eating?
Yes.
Yeah? I'll wait.
He's making
I'm
fun.
just joking.
No worries. Okay, guys. Well, let's start. So we have 2 lectures. Not tonight, of course. Not this year. But we have 2 lectures with Renan, Professor Renan. He's a professor at Leeds Beckett University in England, where he works with sports management. But he was a student here, undergraduate student here, long time ago. Not so long, but
Yeah, 5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years. Well, but then so he did his undergraduate in physical education sports here. Then he did his master in management, not sport management, but management, here in our School of Management here at the university. And then he moved to England to do his PhD there in Durham, University of Durham. And now he's a senior lecturer at the, so it's a pleasure to have you here now. When we started working together a long time ago, we never imagined that we could be here together after such a long time. He was just a young student, but a very clever guy and very good student. So it's a big pleasure to have you here as a guest speaker in our seminar. So we have 2 lectures with Renan tonight, and then also on Thursday morning. So these 2 lectures, they are related to each other, yeah? And so that's it. So Renan, we have here, you probably know, Emily, a student. We have our 5 German students here from Mainz University. Well, one of them is not here, one is not here, a bit sick today. Patricia, and Paulo is doing his master here in sport management as well. So please, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Beton. Thank you for the invitation. And if I speak too fast, just raise your hand, say stop, just because I tend to speak very, very fast. And quite used to speak fast. So how I prepare when Beton invited me to come here was one, to do the first lecture as a foundation to media and sport. So that's what I teach in England now. So sport broadcasting, that's the name of the module that I teach. So the foundations, what I'm saying here is the first 6 weeks that I cover in my module. So I'm trying to cover 6 weeks in 1 hour and a half. So I might rush a lot. I might try to put lots of things in this lecture. Hopefully I can finish. If I cannot, we move some of the content to Thursday morning. Thursday morning, the idea is to focus more on my research. So what I'm doing and what I did. My area is wasn't really media, but it became media. And media, for me, is more about technology. So how technology impacts the way we consume sport and how we relate to sport. So that's more or less the way I see things. You might see here, so if you have your phone, there's the QR codes. There's the QR code for all the readings. So all the readings for my module, Leeds Beckett, you just scan the QR code, you have the reading list. So everything that I'm referencing here, you can find that. So if you want to do this later after the lecture, you just QR code, then you can get all the reference, all the readings, everything that I mentioned here. So before really starting, I'm doing a bit of advertising here. So that applies to anyone. Applies to the German students, applies to the Brazilian students. So myself and another colleague, we have this project. And it's a fully funded PhD project, which we are looking at online gambling behavior. So it's about media. It's about how we interact with multiple devices. So we're watching football on TV or horse racing or whatever we are watching, but we have a phone with us. We might be in a pub and we are betting. So how we interact with multiple devices at the same time by consuming sports and gambling. So gambling is very big in England and probably big as well in Germany. So the deadline to apply is the 27th of May. It's quite like short notice, but it's a small application, probably like 300, 400 words. That's nothing. Everyone can write this. So if you're interested, fully funded, EU fees paid, 15,000 per year, which is not bad, and laptop, office space, and £1,000 to go to conference and so on and so forth. So it's quite a good project. And if you're interested, just like email me, WhatsApp me, or like Twitter me, whatever, and then we can discuss more. But it's about technology. So like how we use technology to consume sport. So that's the idea of the PhD project. So a little bit about me. Beton did most of the introduction. So I did my undergrad here. My undergrad was in sport. When I started here, my whole idea was to research doping. So I want to be a physiologist. Before I want to go to med school. But then I came here, started working with Beton, and then public policy. So that's where I moved from very health side of sport to more to the public one, social policies and social science. Then I did my Erasmus in Germany. So I went to Cologne, to the Deutsche Sporthochschule. Came back, graduated, and I went to do my master's in business marketing. So that was my interest at the time. Then I realized, well, not really this. So I went 2007 to the International Olympic Academy, did a little bit of readings on the Olympic Games, like moving on with what we did in the past with Alberto. So, and then I realized that most of the theories that I used in marketing came from sociology. And I was like, I need to do a PhD in sociology now. So I went to England to do my PhD in sociology, where I studied Liverpool supporters, but not Liverpool supporters in the UK, but Liverpool supporters in Brazil and Switzerland. So my job for 4 years was to go to pubs in Switzerland, watching people watching football. So that's what I did for 4 years. And then I wrote about cosmopolitanism and how people felt as Liverpool supporters, even that they were not from Liverpool. So that's what I did. With the Brazilian ones, I followed them on Facebook. So I stalked them on Facebook, I talked to them, I interviewed them to understand why they support Liverpool. If they've never been to Liverpool, they're not from Liverpool. They don't have any relationship to Liverpool. So that's what I did in my PhD for 4 years. And now I'm teaching media. So that was like moving. So maybe I realized that their consumption, the way they relate to Liverpool was through media, and media was key. And then now I'm teaching media studies. So that's more or less about me. I think a good way to start what I want to say is to use this quote from, you might know him, German philosopher, Niklas Luhmann. No? Never heard? Okay. German philosopher, Niklas Luhmann. So his point is, what we know about society or about the world that we live, we know through mass media. So media mediates the message. So we learn how to behave, we learn what to read, we learn what to love, because that's what media puts on. So that's his point. So media becomes key. We know the world through the media. What they say is what we believe. And probably that's the way I see, and then you're going to see throughout the lecture, this impacting my understanding of media. It's very like sociological approach to media studies. So what I have prepared here. So first, what is sport broadcasting? I don't know, have you done any modules on media studies in Mainz?
Not really.
So for me, you need to understand history. If we don't understand the history, we cannot understand what's happening now, and then we cannot think about the future. So first part is kind of like a historical approach to media and sport. So how both evolved over time from the 1800s, 1700s, and mostly in England. Then we talk about modernity, because that's the time that both media and sport became what we know today. So modernity, 1800s, early 1900s. Then what I call as legacy media, some call old media, traditional media. So that's print media. Here I just put newspaper, so like print, anything that's print. Radio and TV. So that's old. That's the past. But we need to understand how they evolved. Lots, and then probably it's because of my PhD, but like lots on this and modernity is about the nation state. It's about nationalism. Olympic Games is about globalization and nationalism. Both happen at the same time. So how nationalism and globalization are portrayed on the media. And if we can go all the way there, new media. So streaming, OTT, which is over the top. So you pay just a channel, you pay just an event. And social media. And I'm using inverted commas on social media because all media is social. For me, it doesn't make any sense to call Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, social media, because all media is social. That's the point of media. Mediate socialization between different people. All media is social. Well, let's put social media. So, what is sport broadcasting? And there are like some pictures always on the side. Here, this one is one form of media. So, first Olympic Games, 1896. That is that how you say vinyl? Is that the name in English or in German? You know, like the disc that you listen to music? Yeah, vinyl, yeah. So, this one you could buy and you can listen to the Olympic hymn, like the hymn, like the song. So that's a form of media. So like since the 1896, we have media and sports. But the point made by David Rory is that media and sport, they are complete opposite worlds. And why they are complete opposite worlds? Sport is physical. Some might say to me like, well, e-sports is not physical. And so e-sports, sports? I would say e-sports is sports. Like some would argue it's not sports. But traditionally, that's why I have traditionally there, sport is physical. Media is the opposite, isn't physical. So both worlds are completely different, but one needs the other one. So they evolve together. Media needs sport, and sport needs media. If you think today, probably most of our consumption of sport is through the media. So we read about football club, we watch football club, we follow them on Instagram, we follow them on Twitter. So I'm born in Germany, I'm born in Kaiserslautern. I follow FCK on Instagram. Yeah, third division. It's not that bad. But they were good in the past. But I follow them. I consume German football through the media. Over like what, 20 years that I haven't been to the stadium. Yeah. So the connection between sport and the media is key for both sides. So how, and then I don't know if you have this in your undergrad, on your master's, history of sports. So like how sport became sports. So sport, the way we understand sport today, came mostly from the British Isles, so from England, Scotland, so on and so forth. We have like the whole other tradition of the German Turner. We have like in Scandinavia, other forms of physical activities, but competitive sport, most of them came from England or the United Kingdom. And I don't know if you can see here, but that's one form of sport that they had in England at that time. And gambling was key. So rules, there's like a theory that says that rules in sport were formalized because of gambling. Because I'm not putting my money if I don't know the proper rules. And this was one form of sport, or sports activity. Ratting. So there's a dog here, lots of rats, and you gamble on how many rats the dog is gonna get in that amount of time, and so on and so forth. So gambling and sport were since that time connected. You have like other changes in the 1800s. I don't know if you can read much from where you are. But urbanization, industrialization, people getting together, we need to change the forms of sport. We need to take care. So that's where football, rugby, and so on and so forth became what we know today. Because those sports, they got banned. Like other forms of sport, they had like a badger baiting. So I don't know if you know what's a badger. So it's like an animal. They put like inside a box, and they have like a dog. How many times the dog can take the badger out, and then you bet. And then you have this with like a bear. So you put like the bear in a stick, like how many times the dog can bite the bear, and so on and so forth. So like all those games got banned, and then football, rugby took over. And industrialization gave rise as well to mass media. So what is mass media? It's the idea that we have like a small group that can write or can share information to a larger audience. So the ones controlling the information. One of the theories says that the first function of mass media was to create this sense of nation. So when Hochdeutsch got institutionalized in Germany, when Germany became Germany. So when French became French, more or less at the same time. Because we all share the same language. We can all read the same newspaper. So media was used to create a sense of nation. Share identity. The second one was to entertain. So you read to be entertained. And entertainment leads to advertising. So this is like a newspaper, 1910 in Brazil. It's a newspaper written in English for the English spat community, like for the English that used to live in Brazil at that time. I just like took this picture here because there's like an advertising here from a school, saying that you can come here and you can learn to play the English sports. You can learn to play cricket, you can learn to play football, you can learn to play rugby. Well, I don't know if you've been out already here. You know this beer. Yeah, so they were.
They know a lot.
Yeah, they know a lot.
Many different kinds.
Okay. So from 1910, they were advertising already in a newspaper. So that's where mass media moved from the idea that they had to sell the proper newspaper from selling space and advertising. So they don't make the money from selling the newspaper, they make the money from advertising. And sport is the cheapest content you can get. That's the link between sport and media. Because sport is cheap, sport is available. So Sport, one, attracts large crowds. So lots of people go to the games. Lots of people are interested in the games, or like any event. It's easy to translate to other cultures. So you can teach people to play football. People love football worldwide. For me, this one's the key one. It's less expensive. If you look at the price, how much it costs to produce a 1 hour Netflix episode, and how much it costs to broadcast a football game, you're gonna realize how cheap football is. Because it's not just that 1 hour, or like 1.5 hour football game. You have talk shows, you have all the rest that we don't take into account. So 1.5 hour becomes 5, 6, 7 hours of content. So it's cheap content. That's key. Human drama. People love drama. So one of the key points on the development of media was that they would send people to the court. To the court in the sense that they would stay there and see, oh, there's a crime, and they would report the crime because people want to read this. And sport has this. We don't need to pay anymore. It just happened. And they're real people. That's key. So that's the reason between sport and media and why one needs the other one to exist. There's this short video I probably won't show because I think I might run over time, but you might find this, well, you'll probably find this because I found this on YouTube. That's a video from Marshall McLuhan. So he's like one of the key theorists in media studies. It's quite interesting because this video is quite old, and I'll show like the first minute or so, and they're talking about gadgets and how new gadgets are changing our life. But like this video is like from the 50s. If I just change and put color, you might believe that's like from the same time here now, because that's what he theorized back in the 50s.
Well, there they are. Our new electronic media, or our new gadgets. You push a button, and the world's yours. You know, they talk about the world getting smaller? Well, it's thanks to these that it is. Everywhere is now our own neighborhood. We know what it's like to go on safari in Kenya, or to have an audience with the Pope, to order a cognac in a Paris cafe. But not only is the world getting smaller, it's becoming more available and more familiar to our minds and to our emotions. The world is now a global village. A global village. Well, if the appliance store is the symbol of the age we're living in now, what about the symbol of the age just past? Because in contrast to all of this, we used to have just one medium, or one gadget, if you like. John? Go on around. You're in a bookstore. In the hallowed, respectable center of the age of print, the age of the book.
Yeah. So it just like goes on and on. So for me, like that's kind of like the introduction to the lecture. So the relationship between media and sport, and how one becomes indispensable to the other one. At the same time that this is happening, we have modernity. So modernity is happening. So the first point is that we have that move from traditional folk activities like rat baiting, badger baiting, bear baiting, fist fighting, so on and so forth, to proper sports, or like sports that we know today. So that happened at that time. We have like competing cultures, sporting cultures, as I said. We have like the German Turner, we have like the one in Scandinavia, but mostly the sports that we follow, Olympic Games, they are mostly invented or created in England at that time. Again, bringing one example, you cannot see from there, but that's a newspaper, the same newspaper from the other one that I brought, 19 something, 02 I think, written for the British expat community in Brazil. Here's like a whole page reporting sports. And which sport they are reporting in Brazil at that time? First sport played in Brazil.
Rowing, maybe. Tennis.
Cricket. So, lot of the clubs in Rio, they were cricket clubs. So Fluminense, the guy that, I don't know if you know Fluminense, so the guy that created Fluminense, he was member of the cricket club, which his father was one of the directors. And then in his spare time, he created a football club. So people want to play things that gave status. So you want to be British, because that's the time that England ruled the world. You want to mimic what the English did. So that's what prestige, class, and power relates to. So you want to be British. And media reinforce that message. So you're going to read about the proper sports. You're going to play the proper sports. At the same time, we have the creation or the invention or the reinvention of the Olympic Games. So we have globalization, and I'm going to talk more about globalization a bit, but we have nationalism happening at the same time. So both coexist. It's not one overarching or like overriding the other one. One needs the other one. So we can only have a nation-state competition as the Olympic Games because we have globalization. We cannot have one and not have the other one. Both walk together. So from the 1800s, nationalism and sport becomes the battleground for competition between nation-states. Famous movie, another example of media. I don't know if you watched this already. Old movie, Chariots of Fire. Represent very well that period in time. Competition between nation states. So that's the point I just made. That globalization and nationalism, they coexist. They're not, globalization is not the role to the nation state. Probably even reinforcing the nation state. And going back to that point that I made about the first, or like one of the reasons, or probably the first reason of the existence of media, is that it creates a sense of shared identity. So media and sport and nationalism, they are self-reinforcing. So we support Brazil because we are Brazilians. But why we need to support Brazil? Because we are Brazilians. Why cannot I support Germany? I'm not German. I'm born in Germany. Am I German or not? According to my passport, I'm not German. But can I support Germany? Or do I need to support Brazil? So that was like kind of like the questions that I asked on my PhD. So they're Brazilians. Why do you support Liverpool? Doesn't make sense. For them, it makes absolute sense. But they are self-reinforcing. Yeah, probably you cannot see very well. But media creates this sense of identity and creates, for me at least, creates what we love. That's something I'm doing at the moment, working with machine learning and artificial intelligence to categorize news. So I'm getting news automatically from multiple media. Like I'm getting like from Germany as well, from Süddeutsche Zeitung and Deutsche Welle probably, can't remember. But they don't publish much on sport, or at least I'm not getting much on sport, but I'm getting from other ones. So this one is The Guardian. I don't know which one is it. I cannot read. One is The Guardian, the other one is The Independent, both from the UK. Over 50% of the news that they write, this big chunk here, is football. I got from other Daily Mail, Daily Mirror, I'm not showing them today, 85% football. So how can we love something else if we don't see, read, or listen about? It creates what we like. So,
do you count that in the number of news or in the number of pages?
news.
So if you have like one big news, one full page, and the other one just a short note, it counts the same?
Yeah. These ones that I did was 91% accuracy, because computer is doing for me. So I'm training a model, and the computer learns how to identify if that's football, if that's Olympic Games. So I like to put things together. So like there's like one here is like fighting. So fighting has like MMA, boxing. There's another one is racing. Racing has like cycling, car racing, horse racing. Because if I had like to do multiple categories, they won't learn with that amount of news that I have so far. So that's 1 month. So 1,300 news in 1 month. So that's England. If you go here, we have ESPN. And you can see that, yes.
But wouldn't you say that there is another reason that everybody loves football? So because maybe it's like you can play this game really easy on the street, and that's why everybody is practicing it and doing it, compared to handball, for example. You always need 14 players to play a real handball game. And football, you can just take your ball and go to the street, and like maybe that's also a reason. And it's not only about how much we experience it through media. Do you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, for me it gets to that point, what comes first? So why you don't play cricket in Germany? Is that because no one plays cricket, or is it because it's not on the media? So I think it's hard to find the first point, but I do agree. So it's one sport that's easier to play, it's easier to understand, but maybe it's easier to understand because your parents know, you know, your grandparents know, and it's on the media. But where it starts, I don't know where it starts. But yeah, I do agree. Talking about handball, I don't know where handball here, but that's ESPN, US. That's L'Equipe in France. And handball, I think it's this one. It featured heavily. It was quite interesting to see handball here, but football is still like the biggest one. Here, if I'm not mistaken, that's a college sport. So I had like to put like college sport together. They had like volleyball, they had like everything. I still want to do with like gender, because most likely 95% are male sports. And that's one thing that we can talk probably in the next lecture. So like how we mark gender marking. So that's one of the theories. We don't say the men's World Cup. Some people say the World Cup. And then when I say World Cup, you probably know that's football. And when it's Women's World Cup, it's Women's World Cup. Why you need to gender mark? So for me, it's easier to put like in a machine learning, because normally women's sport are gender marked. So if I can train a model to understand that's women's, I can find the relationship, and it's probably going to be 95% men's, 5% women. But that's again 1 month of news. So L'Equipe, I got like 4,000 news in a month, and that's a little bit less, was like 85% accuracy. So there was like some mistakes that the model did. And hopefully you're gonna learn better next time when I run with more news. So always like collecting data and running the model and see how it goes. But it kind of like, for me, it kind of like creates a national culture. sporting culture. So what we love, what we do. Again, that's your point. What comes first? I don't know. But it's self-reinforcing. If we want like another key aspect to mark, you probably cannot read, I cannot read, to mark the importance of media to sport is to look audience. So here, audience figure for the FIFA Men's World Cup in Brazil 2014. And final, 500 million watched the final game. How many would fit in a stadium? 80,000. If it wasn't mediated, just 80,000 would know about that game. So media is key in sharing that information, the way we consume. We consume most of the sport through the media. You went to the game on Sunday, yeah? When was the last time you went to a game?
Wednesday.
Okay, before that. Before. In Germany.
A few months.
Okay. When was the last time you watched the game on TV? Champions League? Yeah. So, we mostly watch games. We don't go to the We might go. I always ask my students, when was the last time they played football? And some say like, a month, 2 months. Like, what was the last time you played FIFA?
The day before yesterday.
Yeah. When was the last time you played FIFA? And they play FIFA every day. So you are mediating your participation as well. It's not just watching, it's about participating. So esports is sport. But the point is that sport is global, but it needs to resonate locally. So there's no point, for a Brazilian company to buy the rights of the Cricket World Cup, Men's World Cup, that is going to take place in England this year. Because people don't follow cricket. It's a cheap, probably very cheap, to buy this. So lots of over-the-top channels now, they're buying cheap content and making them available. But it needs to resonate locally to be globally appealing. A point made by Lumen, not about sport, but really on sport, is that we love scandals. We love the dirty aspect of sport. It's not only what happened on the pitch, we want the rest. We want the background stories. Most of the stories are background stories. And sport provides us with this. All the drama, all the background stories. So that's like the modernity part. Now I'm moving more to the traditional media, old media, legacy media. And as I said, when I say newspaper, it's print media. So anything that's print, it could be a magazine. Radio is radio, TV is TV. Old TV. So, newspaper. Probably the first medium to cover sports. And goes back, at least in the USA, to the 1700s. So back in the 1700s, they were already featuring results on sports. And similar to that point that I made at the beginning, that they don't rely on selling a newspaper, they rely on selling advertising on a newspaper. That's where the money comes from. And to drive readership, you need to have those scanners, background stories. Nowadays, you say like bait clicking. Do you know that term? So it's the same thing, just different way. So that's like a piece of news from 1920s. New York Times talking about Baby Ruth, that he got arrested and then he's going to play baseball later. Background stories, scandal. That's where people get hooked with the content. If we look at how research is done on the relationship between print media and sport, there are three key areas. So one is the content. It's more or less what I did with that graph. So what they are covering, what they are not covering. We can talk about the quality of the content. We can talk about how people read, or like how they interpret back what's being said to them, and how people write. So who is writing that piece of news? So who are the content producers? I think you can see here. What can you see here? That's like a print screen from the Telegraph, a newspaper in England. I took this print screen back in November. What can you see? Or what cannot see? We're talking about like what sports are there, things like this.
There's no football. A lot of football.
A lot of football, yeah.
There's no woman.
No woman. So, one cycling, one cricket, one racing, 5 footballs, 7 rugbies, a mix of rugbies, all 15 men, 0 women. Something else that's missing?
Disabled.
Exactly. Disability sport. Why it's not there? So, if we don't see, how can we know about it? How can we become consumers of the Paralympic Games or women's sport if they're not covered? But again, what comes first? They're not covered because no one's interested, or they are not covered and no one's interested. So one self-reinforcing the other one. How can we change this, or should we change this? But that's just one example of how media content-wise is breakdown. So, first thing, and here's like I think it's a good example, sport, and when I teach in England, 95% are men of my students. Here, probably similar. Sport journalists, very similar. So most of the journalists, they are men. So they probably gonna cover men's sports because they play men's sports. They grew up watching men's sports. Second point is, those men covering sport, they have pre-assumptions. And they have the pre-assumption that women do not love sports. That the readership is basically men. So they write for men. So they are men writing about men's sport to men readers. But probably not all the readers are men. But that's the pre-assumption. And the systematic nature of sport news production is the idea that most of, I don't know if have you been, did like a journalist came and talked one of the days?
Radio guy.
Yeah, minimum, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so there is one, I don't know if you know this word in English, I learned last year, the beat. I don't know how it's in German. The beat is the journalist that is embedded in a football club or embedded in a sport. So that journalist just covered that sport. So we have here like, in Brazil, like journalists that spend the whole time at the Internacional or at Grande. So they are the beat. So these are the ones that produce most of the news. And if you don't have a beat, probably that sport won't be covered. So that's what's happening normally with like women's sports. There is no beat. There's one person that covers Olympic sports, and then Olympic sports is everything that's not football. And that's like the systematic nature of sport news production. If you don't have a beat that's there all the time, creating stories, like creating in the sense that sometimes they create the story, it's not covered. Yeah, so the first assumption, that all the readers are men. So you write to that man readership. And when they tend to write about women's sport, they focus on desirable sports. So what are desirable sports? Sports that are feminine. There's no contact sports. So if you look at the ones that the authors put, gymnastics, tennis, and swimming. So those are the sports normally covered on women's side. And not only how or what they cover, but like how they cover. If you look at, let's see, ESPN and Sport Illustrated, and like other examples, why are the women naked? They are athletes. Why are they not dressed as athletes and competing? So, again, it's not only what they cover, but like how they cover. There are like multiple examples that I'm probably gonna bring on Thursday morning. Radio, second medium that got connected to sports. So probably you saw this when you went to the game on Sunday and the other game. Here in Brazil, and that's like Brazilians, they always have their phones. Like in the past, they're like big like this. You could buy outside the stadium. If your team is losing, you throw the radio inside the pitch, throw like the batteries. Yeah, it was like that in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when I grew up in the 90s. But radio producers, they saw sport as a driver for sales. So how to get people buying radio? Why you buy a new media if you have like newspaper that get you the news? So again, sport, cheap content, you made available on radio, people would buy radios. So 1920s in US, radio moved from one household to 400, so like one radio per 400 houses to 1 to 3. So like almost everyone had a radio at home. So radio got popularized because of the content. Sport was one of the content. So you could listen live. And of course live. I couldn't find this, I never found again. But there are some pictures from pubs in England from the 1700s and 1800s that they advertised live results. Live result was telegraphed. So every 10 minutes they would telegraph the pub saying what was the result. And that was live sports in the 1800s in England. For us like Twitter, for us like Facebook. So live is just changing what it means to be live. Probably augmented reality, virtual reality in the future. But, and that's like probably, we all know this, but if you look at how radio shows here, particularly here in South Brazil, operate, and then you have like one famous talk show at noon, is that probably 95% are men there, old men. All jokes are for men, 2 men. And they're talking about sports. So radio doesn't broadcast. What they say is narrowcast. Narrowcast to that small kind of audience. So white males. Like white general. Let's put like white males. But radio, different from newspaper, a little bit similar to newspaper, but different to TV. We have to use imagination. Because they're broadcasting or like narrowcasting the game, and we need to imagine what's happening. So they cannot focus that much on the background stories, on the scandals. Because if they start talking about this, we don't know what's happening on the game. So it's a different way of portraying the action. So that's particular with live sports. Moving to TV, I quite like this quote here. That if you ask anyone what's on TV now, probably sport, and if it's Brazilian TV, probably football. Because that's what they broadcast all the time, is football. So you're gonna find a football game. That's very similar to what I'm trying to do on the PhD. People are betting on leagues in Asia, in leagues in Mexico, because that's what they're playing at the time that they pick their phones. So sport is 24/7 available nowadays. But what we see on TV, at least in the US, that 47% are live events, so like the live game, 30% journalism, so like news, and 15% fictions, so movies about sport. You have documentaries as well. If we look at the coverage of the Rio Olympic Games from NBC, the breakdown between gender was 52 to 48. So like there were like more women's sport covered than men's sport. But of those sports, 98% were those desirable sports. At least the sports part. I'm going to cover a little bit about the scandal part. And choose slides through now.
What do you mean as acceptable sports? What do you mean when you say acceptable sports?
Feminine sports. So like non-contact sports. Swimming, tennis, gymnastics. But that's another example of new media. Netflix. So Netflix is not in the business of live sports yet. But if you just like did this just before preparing the lecture in the morning. Sports, like plenty. Documentaries, movies, and so on and so forth. Facebook was on live sport. Twitter was on live sport. And here Facebook's like broadcasting some of the Brazilian games. So maybe there's like the difference between this medium, that they focus more on what TV channels don't focus. At the moment, at least. So if you look at the NBC coverage of the Rio Olympic Games, those were big stories. Do you know who's this guy? Swimmer. Ryan Lochte. Do you know what he did during the Olympic Games in Rio? That he lied to the police that he got mugged. And then actually he was drunk and he broke the whole gas station. Yeah, so there was like a big story because they went out, all the swimmers, they got drunk, they went to the gas station in Rio, they broke everything, and then they lied to the police saying that they got arrested. Well, they got mugged by fake police, and that's why they lost accreditation, that's why they couldn't get inside the Olympic Village. And of course then CCTV found everything, all the evidence that they broke, and then he had to apologize. But it was like a big thing that, Brazilians, they don't know how to receive foreigners, Brazilians are dangerous, don't go to Brazil, blah, 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 all this on the media. And then a week after, that story didn't happen. But that was one of the big stories. Second one was this lady here, South African, 77-year-old coach, athletics, I think it's athletics. So, background story again. Oh, she was the oldest coach in the Olympic Games, blah, blah, blah. Welsh, the beach volleyball player, she was going for the 4th gold medal. She finished with a bronze medal. So like a star, but background story. An old athlete competing. So we had like the scandal with sex abuse or with the gymnastics in US, another story. And then you have the big stars, both Bolt and Phelps, going for the medals, and probably the last Olympics for Bolt and so on and so forth. Those were the key stories of the 2016 Rio Olympic Games for NBC in the US. I don't know if you remember at that time, so NBC contacted the IOC and asked to change the order of the nations when they parade on the opening ceremony. Have you heard this story? Because they parade in their home nation language. So in Portuguese, United States is with E. So Estados Unidos. So they were gonna be beginning, middle. In English, USA, the last one. So NBC wanted the IOC to change the rules to make USA to parade the last, so they can keep the audience throughout the whole opening ceremony. IOC said, no, we cannot do this for you. But that's the power of the media. Yes?
One thing that is interesting is the time when the swimming competition were it happened in Brazil, because it was like
Midnight, yeah.
midnight, 10 p.m.
Yeah.
just to broadcast in
Yeah.
this television.
Yeah. So like changing time, so like the power of media to change time, make people like compete midnight. We had like one example in England, UFC, MMA. So they fought at 4 a.m. in England to be prime time in Las Vegas. So the fight started at 4 a.m. in England. It was crazy. So all the fighters. Yeah. So moving to the next topic, nationalism and globalization. That goes back to that point that I made. They both exist together. So nationalism exists because of globalization. Globalization exists because of nationalism. That's at least the way I see. But media, when they write, they create, and probably you know this in Germany as well, because very universal, this narrative, we against the others. We create our identity by saying who we are, and by saying who we are not. And that doesn't happen just in the nation state wide. It can happen in regional sites. So, media here in South Brazil would say, that's the way football plays. So that's how we play football in South Brazil. Rio, they don't know how to play football. It's just tricks and stuff like this. That's not proper football. That's proper football here. So we versus them. And we have here again, Internacional and Grêmio. And what you're gonna say, that's the way they play, that's the club of the people, the other ones, the other kind of clubs, so always creating these battles between we and the other, creating the other as different. And we have in Germany, Mesut Ozil, and then you have probably other players in Germany facing similar things. So they're not proper Germans. They're not Germans. That's what they say sometimes. And that happened in England as well. So, London Olympics, there was like a new term coined, plastic Brits. They're not proper Brits. They had like a parent that was maybe English, but not 100% English. But they competed for United Kingdom, for Team GB. But some of the media, especially right-wing media, would say they shouldn't be competing for us. We have other examples. Benzema. So Benzema, when France wins, he's French. When they lose, he's Muslim, he's Arab. Scottish tennis player, Andy Murray. Andy Murray, when he wins, he's Brit. When he loses, he's Scottish. And so on and so forth. And probably you have the same in Germany. So what it means to be German, what it means to be Brit, Brazilian, and so on and so forth. What do you see? That's like that kids game. Spot the difference. What's the difference? That's like 1990 World Cup in Italy. That's men's World Cup in Italy. That's men's World Cup in Russia. What's the difference? Yeah.
On the right, only England flags. On the left, also Great Britain flags.
Yeah. So that's the difference. So in the 90s, England was playing here, but the flag was the Union Jack. The Union Jack is not the English flag. That's the Great Britain and Northern Ireland flag, all together. Here is St. George's Cross, which is the English flag. So English people took over that symbol of the Union Jack to represent English nationalism. Move forward a few years on time, they are using the Union Jack. And the point is, the stories, the narratives, they're always told by the dominant ethnicity. So England dominates Great Britain, and that's why they use that flag. And it was quite interesting because I wrote a blog about nationalism, and I got contacted by Russia Today. I don't know if you know that channel. They wanted me live on a debate about English nationalism. And Russia Today is sponsored by the Russian government. And I was like, I'm not going to get involved in this. Thank you. I wasn't even in Sweden, so I couldn't go. But I wasn't going to get involved. So like they have like this bad relationship between Russia and United Kingdom, especially. So yeah, there's like a change in discourse. What it means to be English, what it means to be British. British means to be English or Scottish or Welsh or Northern Ireland. But that's like the nationalist part. If you go to the globalization part, we can argue that the new technologies allow us to consume any form of sport, anytime, from anywhere. So as fans that I follow, they were here in Brazil, they watch all the Liverpool games. People that I follow in Switzerland, same thing. It allows us to become fans. So the lines, the nation-state lines, they're kind of blurred now. They don't cease to exist, but where are those lines? Who is German? Who is Brit? So those lines are blurred. We need to define them. It's not like proper defined. As I said at the beginning, am I German just because I'm born in Germany? I'm Brazilian? I'm in English now? So who am I? So that's definitions. But the idea that we have a global audience is a myth. So get the FIFA World Cup. That's the thing that I'm going to show now. Get the FIFA World Cup, Men's World Cup. Are we all watching the same game? We're watching probably the same image. Are we listening to the same people speaking? The same interpretation of what's happening on the pitch? The same stories? Probably not. So what I did 2018 during summer, I got a VPN. You know what a VPN is? So I got a VPN. You go to the FIFA website. If you just change your country, you go like straight to that country page, and you can watch on the free-to-air TV. So I watch games in German, I watch in French, I watch in Spanish, I watch in Portuguese, I watch here in Brazilian Portuguese, watch in English. So I try to watch games in different broadcast channels. Are they saying similar things or not? Are we consuming the same game? They're not the same. Well, the same game is like the same action, but what people are saying is not the same. But together with this, what I did, I probably cannot see, that's a Twitter network. So I stream tweets mentioning different broadcasting channels. So that was like a game on the 20th of June, so like 3 games on that day. I left streaming tweets, collecting tweets, and then I run this network. So there were 70,000 users tweeting. It's not like the whole thing, it's just like a sample, like the app that I used, with 100,000 connections. Probably you cannot see, but there are lines. So lines is a mention. So if I tweet and I mention new, that's a line. The size of those things here is because they got mentioned more times. The colors are languages. Those big ones, of course, because I stream asking for who mentioned this. That's why they're big. Because they were the official broadcasters. But what we can see is that if I'm Brazilian, those are like Sport TV and then another Brazilian channel that show games. So if I am Brazilian, I tend to be connected to those. I'm going to interact with them. I'm not going to interact with BBC because I'm not watching football on BBC. I'm watching on Sport TV. So we have a global event, but actually the event is happening in multiple places at the same time. We are consuming different things. So the nation-state lines, they still exist, but they're different. Of course, I could, as I did, I could get a VPN and watch broadcast from any country in the world. But we don't do this. We watch from our own place, our own interpretation. So, moving to new media, probably that's the last topic. So, first point that I want you, well, let's say remember, is that new media is not only competing against legacy old media, they're complementing. So we consume both. We still consume both. We still buy a newspaper. We still watch TV. But we might do this with our phone in our hands. We might do this by tweeting at the same time, by engaging on Facebook, and so on and so forth. So they compete and complement. So both happen at the same time. That's, I don't know if you did this already. That's one thing. That's called second screening or screen stacking. You watch multiple things at the same time. Of course, I could have been with my phone. I just used the phone to take a picture. But I could have been with my phone watching something else. So, or like betting or doing whatever I want to do. So, we complement our consumption behavior, patterns, practice by using multiple devices, multiple media. But there's a problem. Our attention is not unlimited. Our time of the day is just 24 hours. So they are competing for our attention. There's some quite nice YouTube clips, TED Talk, from a guy that used to work for Facebook. And then now he's just like, he's hardened by Facebook, he left Facebook, and he's like completely against social media. And he goes and talk about how he designed apps to get your attention. So why you get notifications? Why those notifications keep popping up? Because they want your attention. They want you to pick your phone, have a look, open the app, and so on and so forth. It was quite nice to watch his TED Talk. New media normally tend to be associated with two concepts. One is being digital, the second one being interactive. And for me, interactive might be the most important one. Media is what mediates. It's what between the producers of the content to the reader or the viewer, so on and so forth. New media, that's like one-way communication. New media allows both-way communication. So that's the interaction. And if clubs are not doing this, they're doing it wrong. If you have a Twitter and you're just posting things and not engaging with your followers, you're using Twitter as a newspaper. So there's no point to use Twitter. You need to engage. That's what new media is. It's the ability to interact with the reader, and the reader to interact back with the producer. So there are like 6 characteristics, and for me the last 2 ones are the most important ones. So first one, temporal constraints. If we look at legacy media like TV, radio, and newspaper, they are bound by time. Normally TV, live sport, bounded by that time. You're not going to watch something that happened already. You're not going to go back to TV and watch a game that happened. Netflix, you can watch anytime. You can watch half of the episode, and you can continue watching it. So that's the difference. But we still have fidelity to particular medium. So I'm in England. I like Brazilian football. I can watch the games, but games are, let's put it, bad, not say shit. I don't like the quality of the games. So how I watch the games here, I listen to the games because they sound better. I can close my eye, I can imagine, and I transport myself to be here. So I like the radio. I even like more before and after the game. I don't care about the game. I want to see like that background stories, what's happening here in Porto Alegre. That's my fidelity to one particular medium, to consume one particular sport. Screen size. So that's like one of the key things that probably you're not going to be tweeting on your flat TV 4K. Probably going to be tweeting on your phone. And probably going to be watching football on your screen and not on your phone. It might change, but screen size determines what you're going to do in each of the screens that you have in front of you. Accessibility. So legacy media is accessible. You could buy a newspaper, you can read on the bus, you can read anywhere, but new media can be consumed on the go. Anytime, anywhere, about anything. So they're not constrained by time. So a news that was written in a newspaper is old news. It happened a day before. It's not what's happening. On Twitter, you know what's happening. It's live. Newspaper was live. It's not live anymore. That's something that happened a day before. The 2 most important ones for me, at least. That's why I changed their order from the authors. Control. All media who controls the message is the producer. And the producer is the media conglomerate. So they're going to say what they want to say, and we're going to read what they say. New media, because production cost is lower, allows us to write. We can write, we can create our own content. So the control of the message is not only from the media conglomerate, it's for fans. Of course, in the past we have like fanzines. You can buy a fanzine if you go to a game. But now, you can go to Facebook, and you have like a whole blog there. You can go on Twitter, you're going to follow someone, so on and so forth. So who controls the message? Controls power. But who controls the message now? When we can create. People are stopping to watch TV, going to YouTube. And you have YouTubers. Like young kids, they just follow YouTubers. They don't follow what global producers say, whatever. So the control changes hands. Much more on the hand of the consumer, which becomes the prosumer. And the point that I made, interactivity. So new media allows interactivity. And for me, it's pointless to have a new media channel platform if you're not interacting. If you're just posting news there, you can find it somewhere else. The beauty of new media is allow people to interact, one with the producer and with others. So as I said, on the PhD, I follow Liverpool fans online, on Facebook, and they interact with each other. They will bring media things, but they will write and create their own content all the time. So they create this community. Do you all play video games? So probably I don't know if you can relate to this, but in my time when I played video games, there were magazines about video games, about games. It's media. And you can buy the magazine, of course. At the end of the last page of the magazine, they have a high score list of games. Who are the high scorer. So how you can feature yourself on that list, and I did when I was a kid. So you play the game, you get a high score on the game. Of course, you get a camera. You cannot take a print screen. You get a proper camera, you take a picture, you go develop that picture, you post that picture to people in the magazine, and they will put your name. How long it takes. Of course, it's interactive. Nowadays, I can just print screen, send, that's my name there. The speed is changing, but it's the same idea, interacting. And if you're not interacting, there's no point. That's the way I see it. So, if we look at the fan side, so that's more on the media side, because fans are producers as well. One, you can self-express yourself. You can create your own identity. So more or less, that's what the example I just did. When I sent my high score on that game, I was then self-expressing myself. Today, it's just faster. You can create those fanship networks. So there was one example during that time that I followed them on Facebook, the Brazilian ones, that a Norwegian girl came to Brazil. She was going to be in Rio. So she joined the community, Facebook community, and she messaged everyone oh look, I'm a Norwegian, I'm going to be in Rio from this to that day. Where can I watch a Liverpool game? So lots of people said, go to this pub, go here, go there, there's going to broadcast there. So it creates this community that is not bounded by nation state, it's not bounded by geographic location. One of the key things that how they define themselves as proper Liverpool fans wasn't the ability of going to the games, was knowing. They knew about Liverpool, they knew about players' history, they knew about everything, but they learned a different way. So it's not that my father going to tell me, because that's very patriarchal football, going to tell me the whole story of Liverpool or Internacional, Grande. But one day I'm going to wake up, I'm going to read about 1992 championship. And that's how they learn and how they share knowledge. So Facebook group was about sharing knowledge about Liverpool. So it was mostly about this. Parasocial interaction, you probably all have Instagram, I don't know if you do have, but we tend to follow people that we've never seen in our lives, and we tend to even comment on those pictures or those stories, and we believe that we have a relationship with that person, not a love relationship. Sometimes people do that, like this. It goes to that extreme, but that's called parasocial relationship or interaction. It's not a proper social interaction. And you can create those competitive ambitions. And that was the example of the high score. But we have fantasy leagues and so on and so forth that you can compete. It's a new form of media. Fantasy leagues, FIFA, Ultimate Team, and so on and so forth. So that's from MMA. McGregor Khabib. I don't know if you watched that fight. So I did the same thing. I followed McGregor, Khabib, and UFC during the entire period of that UFC event. there were 120,000 Twitter users talking, over 230,000 connections. And for me, that shows parasocial relationship. Because media companies, ESPN, they're like very small. We don't need media companies to mediate our relationship to athletes or organizations. We go straight to them. Khabib and McGregor, they're not just athletes, they're media companies. Liverpool is not just a football club, it's a media company. It's generating content and putting content in their own platforms. So the power is shifting from the proper media companies that mediate the message to directly the athlete. I don't follow ESPN on Instagram, I follow athletes. Another example is from Grande. They won early this year, and you can see like the size is very different because it's like more local, just 15,000, 23,000 connections. So I just follow Inter and Grêmio. You can see like the two communities, they're very like separated, they hate each other. But what was interesting is that you cannot see, but bigger ones here, next to the clubs, which ones that I follow, were the presidents. So like the president of Grêmio and the president of Internacional. So people were like commenting or like tweeting them. Not tweeting the media, not tweeting RBS. Why? Because that game, both clubs decided to play with the reserve side. So everyone was talking to the presidents. Why you made that decision? Why you decided to play not with the best squad? So again, it's not mediated. Well, it's mediated because via Twitter, but it's not mediated by a media company. It's a direct contact. So, probably one of the last slides, and I'm finishing here. I managed to do 1.5 hours. Is that point that athletes, clubs, they are media companies. This is from Tony Hawk. You know Tony Hawk, probably? Yeah. So Tony Hawk, 3.7 million followers on Instagram. So he can produce his own content. He can put videos, you can comment it, he can comment back, he can reply. And lots of the things that they post is their life outside competition. Because that's what we want to see. We want to see them as a real person. We don't want to see them just as athletes. What they eat, what time they go to bed, what's happening with their family, so on and so forth. That's the scandal, that's the other side of the story that we want. That's what we like. They can do this all the time now. So backstage communication is what engage more of the listeners, or like the followers. And as I promised, that was the last slide. So, in summary. So, sport and media, complete opposite worlds. One's like more physical, if you don't take esports into consideration. And the other one is mediated. That's the idea of media, to mediate messages, pass message, one side to the other one. But one needs the other one. They are symbiotic. One builds on top of the other one. We have sport, communication, and nation. So, nation states are made to some extent by the media because it's one shared language, it's one shared story. But, as I said, globalization is not eroding a nation state, one needs the other one. There are three ways of looking at media production. So what is the content, the quality of the content, and who produced the content, and probably the fourth together with, so how we read the content. media tends to create this idea of like we versus them, because that creates drama, and we love drama. And the difference between old media and new media, for me, the two most important ones out of the 6 blocks of control. So like who controls the message? It's moving from the producer to the consumer. And the last one that I forgot. Interactivity. Yeah, interactivity. That's the last one. So that is from me today. So if I have any more questions, please ask. Yes.
So my question is, you said that media and sports are connected, of course, but if you recognize in the last few years is that media becomes sport because of esports. You mentioned, I don't know if you will present about this tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but I want to know your opinion on this topic. If you like this idea that media becomes sport in reality, or what do you think about this?
I think that's like a way, or let's say a way forward that's gonna happen. I think like esports is here, and then people are gonna continue playing. So as I said, like my students, they don't play football, but if I ask them if they play FIFA, they say, yeah, I did today, or like I did yesterday. And then probably kids are the same thing, so they grow up with this. Things are mediated. They were mediated in the past. It's a different form of mediation. We have more screens available to us, and then we are being bombarded by messages in all the screens that we have. So probably sports will have to adapt. If you look at historically what sports they played in the first Olympic Games, they have like tug of war. So we don't imagine tug of war today in the Olympic Games. So why we cannot imagine esports in the future? Or get one example, F1, so like Formula 1. Why F1 cannot be in the Olympic Games? You might argue that they cannot be because it's too big and they need to build like a whole circuit and so on and so forth. So why not do an e-sport version of F1? Put everyone in simulators, they race, they're done, and you can follow. So in England now, they just had the first national championship. I don't know, anyone cycle here? No cyclists. Swift, have you heard about Swift? So Swift is like an app that you put on the screen, and then you have your bike, and you cycle, and then like the person on the screen like moves, and then you can go left and right, you can go slipstream, you get like easier to pedal. So they just had the first professional national competition on Swifts. Like professional cyclists. They went and cycle on a stage. You can sit there, you don't need like to just watch them like go past 45 kilometers an hour. Just like sit there and watch them cycle for 3 hours, 4 hours. So it can happen. Yeah?
I have a question about the nationalism and globalization thing.
Yeah.
You said that both of them need each other or they're related to each other. And then I was thinking about just what you said in the end, that it becomes more and more the athlete itself who is in the middle of attention, and that they can like broadcast themselves through the media, for example. And I was thinking about a thing we learned in Canada University, or we were thinking about, as the Olympics, for example, IOC, they ban the economic part from the athletes so that they don't, like use their sponsors and stuff, and they like try to protect the games. So they kind of risk that the athletes don't need IOC anymore, for example, and therefore nationalism will be destroyed. And so maybe if we say like media is related or is connected to the globalization, then maybe this part destroys the nationalism. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I think it's a good point. Yeah.
So
Because if you
think
think
that they are not together, I would rather say globalization or media as globalization destroys nationalism,
Yeah,
because we
you
don't need it anymore.
yeah, you can. But then you have like at the same time, let's say Brexit. We have like globalization in the UK, lots of like foreigners, like Europeans or like non-Europeans. But then you have like a reaction from a part of the nation. It's like, well, we don't want this. And they go back, let's say go back to time. And they're like, oh yeah, like England for English people. So there's always like a reaction. So maybe we go like too far in globalization, and then there's a reaction that nationalism goes back. But I think that's a good point, especially if we look individual sports. I don't know if you follow any individual sports, let's say tennis. Do you support Tommy Haas? Or who do you support in tennis? Do you support Federer, who's like Swiss? Or Nadal, who's Spanish? You don't care about their nationality. But then you go to collective sport, football, you won't be supporting Spain, you're probably going to be supporting Germany. So maybe like individual sports and collective sports, they have like a different way of seeing like globalization and nationalism.
Yeah, maybe in football it's stronger than in other sports.
Yeah.
Would you think it's probable that some days Olympic Games wouldn't exist anymore because, you know, the athletes, they belong then to their companies which sponsor them, and they make like a competition between Adidas and Nike, for example?
Yeah, it can happen. Because like it's all, if you look at historically how the Olympic Games, they're moving, what sports they're putting, so like Tokyo now, we have like climbing, we have surfing, so it's like trying to attract a younger audience. And of course, like you do like climbing is like here, like very, let's say, in artificial wall, and it's fast because it needs to be fast. So like fast climbing, it's like 7 seconds. They climb 50 meters. I think it's 50 meters. Why they don't do a long climbing? If you look historically, sports are getting faster and faster. You have like tennis, that is like the short version of tennis. You have cricket with T20. They're always trying to make faster because our attention is not there anymore. I doubt you watch the full game of football without looking at your phones, even in the stadium. So we are not 100% there. So how we can keep the attention? There is I just like found this the other day. There's like a company in Israel that they use machine learning to learn what are your favorite athletes, what are your favorite moments in the game. So they're like broadcasting the game, let's say football, and you love Neymar. They see the Neymar did a trick, and you get a notification with just that 5-second click. You don't need to watch the full game anymore. You watch just what you want to watch. So maybe we're going to change the way we interact with the proper game. When, let's say my students say that they bet because it gives them a desire to watch the full game. Because if not, they don't care about it. That's what they say.
Exactly like you said.
Colorado or Cremista?
I was born Gremista. My father, my whole family is Gremista. And then when I came to my mind and just realized who I was, 7 years old, I was like, no, I'm not Gremista, and I changed. When I got like intelligence to think, and I'm like, yeah, I won't be Colorado. My father accepted, yeah.
Coming back to your PhD, could you maybe shortly summarize some results? I don't know if that's possible, but the topic seems pretty interesting.
Yeah,
because I know that from Germany that many support Liverpool only because they sympathize with them. But so that's an issue or a topic.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring more on the next lecture.
Okay.
Then I'm gonna focus more on my research.
Okay.
But reasons for supporting Liverpool, many. So one, someone watched 1998 World Cup, and there was like this young English guy that scored against Argentina. You know his name? He was 18 years old, 17 at the time. Michael Owen. So Michael Owen scored that goal against Argentina, and they went to play FIFA. And where Michael Owen played? At Liverpool. And they became Liverpool supporters because of this. some, they were watching the Liverpool final, the one in Istanbul against Milan, and they start crying after the game, and they realize I'm a Liverpool supporter. So like the reasons, they were like everywhere. Well, yeah, I'm gonna talk more about the PhD and everything next time. Well, next Thursday.
More questions, guys?
If you want like to get the reading list from, well, we can do like here as well. All the stuff I put there.
Okay for tonight?
They were, I think they're like, they want
Yeah.
a few drinks. Yeah.
Okay. Guys, thank you very much, Rana, for your
Thank you.
guys, let's see. So we have the continuation of the presentation on Thursday morning.